An old tale tells of a monarch and his faithful servant, who became best friends throughout the years. As the servant's constant response was, "It's all good," the monarch considered him to be somewhat simplistic. The servant, oblivious to the hunt, once loaded the gun with too much gunpowder. While taking his shot, the king inadvertently lost his thumb. Keeping his cool, the servant reassured, "It's all good." Nevertheless, the king was not pleased and determined, saying, "It's not all good. You cannot blow the king's thumb off." He felt compelled to punish the servant as a lesson for the country. The servant was then found guilty and handed a 6-year prison term. The servant remained composed and remarked, "It's all good," in spite of the punishment. Over the course of the following year, the monarch made the decision to venture outside the boundaries of his kingdom, bringing with him a number of soldiers and supplies. Cannibals beheaded them when they ventured into territory the king had never been to before. As the victims were being cooked, the cannibals boiled water in enormous cauldrons, preparing a feast. The cannibals observed the king's missing thumb as he was placed into the boiling. They spared the king's life because they refused to consume tainted food. He was then sent back to his country. Myth 1. An amusing concert. The first feature is the speaker who offers himself as mediator rather than as steward of an old person's property, also called a priesthood. Naked and lost in contemplation, the monarch made the realization that his servant's mistake had really spared his life as he walked back. After apologizing for the servant's unfair sentence, he visited the prison and pardoned him. When the king probed further, the servant answered, "It's all good." He went on to say, "If I hadn't been in prison, I would have been with you on that trip." All of us, often unconsciously, go through this story's depiction of a pathway of awareness. Developing self-awareness is a process that starts with the emotions, moves on to the mind, and then manifests in the body. A child's emotional, cognitive, and bodily experiences of the world are all part of this developmental pathway of awareness. Before continuing, I believe you're here for a reason. You're willing to grow as a person, to develop yourself, to become more present and conscious. For that reason, I recommend you to subscribe to our channel, as growth comes with continuity. Our channel provides many videos to help you with this path to enlightenment. The world around us reflects the awareness pathway. It is not limited to the individual. Our emotional, cognitive, and physical development occur in a cyclical pattern that lasts 7 years. We start school at about 7 years old, which stimulates our minds, and as youngsters we are emotional creatures. When we hit puberty around the age of 14, we start to become more self-aware and conscious of our physical bodies. To commemorate these turning points in development, many cultures have long instituted rites of passage. Beginning at age 7, children would be entrusted with increasing levels of responsibility until they finally assumed their rightful position in the community at age 21. Milestones, like birthday parties or physical changes like tattoos, commemorate these rites of passage, which are now unseen by most people. Prior to physical birth, the process of becoming aware starts. Vibrational awareness develops in the womb as a result of maternal involvement. Everything from the mother's emotional state to the rhythm of her breathing reflects the experiences of the unborn kid. A child's body absorbs this energy and forms an initial imprint. On Earth, emotional newcomers to the world are born. To a young child, the world is full of boundless energy and possibilities. This potential materializes when a kid acquires a vocabulary and finds significance in the things they encounter. We usually mention our mom first. Anything that is given a name eventually becomes a part of our everyday lives. Reading a book, sitting in a bathtub, shaving your legs, dressing your feet. More and more mental work is required of us as we mature. This change starts when we begin to learn language, a magical process that begins around the age of 7. We build sentences using words, and we learn to spell those words. Nevertheless, these lines also start to mold our views and assumptions about the world. At some point, our thoughts and feelings begin to supersede our feelings and define our reality. We start to pay a lot more attention to our bodies and where we fit in the physical universe around the age of 14. This is a pivotal time in a child's development into a teenager, since it is characterized by a growing knowledge of oneself and other people. Someone is kissing each other just before the cut to black. Soon after the cut, we witness a passionate kiss. We undergo a radical transformation before our 21st birthday. At the age of 21, our minds are completely absorbed in the physical world, as if in a trance, and our attention is entirely focused on the physical medium through which we communicate with one another. This is life, and a precious transformation is inevitable. We are being imprinted with knowledge as we go through this cycle, which is first hard for us to see. The purpose of information is to facilitate formational movement. The information that conveys our life's fate or our purpose is being printed onto us. If you don't deal with your karma, you'll get more of it. This is what the Eastern term for this principle might be. Thus, our fate is being imprinted on us, and it appears as follows. This vibration will be imprinted into my vibrational body if, during my 8th month of pregnancy, my parents have an argument and my father says, "I've had enough of this, I'm walking out." As a result, my mother goes through the pain of abandonment, and he becomes furious. Then, 7 years from now, when I'm around 6 years old, my parents will officially divorce, and he'll depart permanently. My mom will be abandoned, and he'll be furious while she's hurting. Now, this arrangement will end permanently. No matter how emotional that trauma is, my mom will always be a part of me, and he'll be furious while she's hurting, no matter how emotional that trauma is. I expect that this time, I will feel strongly about that event. It will permanently mark my emotional body with a specific pattern of moving energy, my energy's behavior and flow. Then, 7 years later, when I'm 13 years old, I form an intense bond with my neighborhood best friend. Anger and a sense of abandonment will wash over me as my best buddy and their family abruptly leave the area. Only this time, I'll be able to feel it in my mind, so I will tell myself things about myself and the world around me based on that experience. Then, picture this. I'm 20 years old, and precisely 7 years after that, I'm head over heels in love, engaged, and preparing to tie the knot. The previous day, she abruptly leaves me. Right now, I'm going to focus on the physical world. In a very physical sense, it will center on her actions, and the ill-fated wedding. The fact that it's the same thing happening time and over again, though, isn't immediately obvious. By the time we reach the age of 21, we are completely absorbed in this world, which is why it appears different to us. We focus a lot on the physical, yet the physical is deceptive because it can change at any moment. It really does. Constant change characterizes the physical. So it appears like something fresh every time something happens to me. It's a whole new occurrence, a fresh set of circumstances. It turns out that the feelings I experienced when my best friend left the neighborhood, when my parents divorced, when I was dumped at the altar, and when I sank into my emotional body and felt the emotion are all the same. As we recognize this fact, so too do our desires. In essence, then, not much has changed. The cycle continues. Whatever it is, by the time I'm 21 years old, it can be considered a disorder from this perspective. It could be seen as a gift from a different angle, but we need to find that angle before we can say that. We refer to it as a dysfunction from this perspective. But that problem is now vibratorily engraved into my vibrational body. My emotional body now bears the stamp of it. It's deeply ingrained in my mind and has a tangible impact on my awareness, body, and situations. I am now able to utilize it. You can count on me to find it and make good use of it. When you inquire, where is your karma? Where is the karma that's happening to you? Where is the karma? They will likely respond with, oh, it's my karma. I'm having a hard time because it's my karma. However, we don't perceive it in that light, but it is actually stored within our bodies as an imprinted pattern. The current state of affairs is that the 7-year cycle keeps on going. By the time I'm 28, I'm meant to have met my future husband and qualified for something every 7 years. Everyone tells me that I should be married, settled down with a family, and climbing the corporate ladder by the time I'm 35. There are expectations that occur in 7-year cycles, and if I examine each one, I will see that the same thing has occurred repeatedly. To perceive it, though, I must train myself to look not through these eyes, nor through the logical or cerebral ones, but through the ones that are connected to my heart. This way, "Why does this always keep happening to me?" is a phrase you're probably familiar with, and it's one of the ways our hearts warn me something is wrong. Someone else has said it before you. As a result, by the time we reach adulthood, we have developed a set of habits for navigating the world. Everything is happening because of the physical world, in our opinion. That's how we've acted. The universe acts in such manner. Such is the behavior of our parents. That is how our politicians act. That is how doctors act. That is how doctors act. This is how everyone acts, because of the physical world. Take this pen I'm holding in my hand as an example of how it works. The world's examples show me that if I want to alter the way I throw this pen, I should shift it around on the floor rather than fling it across the room. I can alter my throwing motion if I so desire. Put simply, I should look for a new job if I am unhappy in this one. I should look for another relationship if I am unhappy in this one. It is my right to seek asylum in another nation if I am unhappy here. Go ahead and do that. Still, the outcome is clear. After 3 months on the job, in a new relationship, or after I've purchased a home and gotten settled here, the same things keep happening. Unfortunately, our limited perception of the material world prevents us from identifying it. However, it starts to feel awkward once more. The same unease begins to surface. Even though the people involved are different, the relay is different, and the area is different. The emotional body is a hidden repository for our pain, so we can't perceive it. The emotional body serves as the pivotal point from which our experiences in this world are derived. In this particular view, we can really relate to our experiences in this world because this is where our personality is formed. If we want peace, we can do it in 3 ways. One option is to remain silently or to talk to people, as a politician might. Still, mere discussion does not lead to actual peace. Feeling calm is more important than having a clear idea or a stable environment. Feelings are what really give rise to our experiences. Although few comprehend it, the awareness pathway reveals that the vibrating body is the cause center of experience. Even though our voices don't vibrate, our emotional, mental, and physical bodies all work together to convey meaning. Modifying the emotional substance is necessary for dealing with the experience's causative point. No amount of effort will likely lead to tranquility if we ignore the emotional body. Focusing solely on symptoms, which may only provide short relief, is common, while coping with physical symptoms like illness. Putting an end to pain is one method of treating symptoms, but it doesn't go to the source of the problem. Even when the mental body is involved in the process via analysis and conversation, it still cannot fix the emotional problems at their core. The emotional body, which each of us first felt when we were young, is fundamental to making sense of our emotional experiences. But it's common for people to bury their emotions as they get older. The term betrayal refers to an idea rather than an emotion. Although when asked about their feelings, someone could claim to feel betrayed. Young people don't utilize such language. They are more forthright when expressing themselves. Drama and genuine feeling become muddled concepts with time. If we want our experiences to change for the better, we need to get in touch with our emotional bodies again. There is nothing complicated about the sensing body's job. A person's loss of balance manifests physically, for instance, in the force of a fall. When you sense an imbalance, your body will naturally correct itself. Feeling by yourself is all that's needed to get back to center. No logic or reasoning is required. Sensory principle, a simultaneous response. 6 senses, part of 1. Healing requires emotional body awareness. Despite the fact that sensed perception was formerly our compass, we no longer rely on it in today's world. We wouldn't need rules from outside sources if we could experience the results of our decisions before taking them. Our instincts would lead the way. Here is where spiritual practices come into play. They facilitate re-establishing communication with and guidance from the emotional body. Like a kid learning to walk, re-entering emotional awareness requires practice. A child's emotional development follows the stages of physical posture, cerebral components, and eventually emotional experience. Meditation follows a similar pattern. After settling into a certain posture, one utilizes a mantra to focus their thoughts, and finally, they enter an emotional state of love and devotion. When we shut off our emotional awareness, we lose the ability to recognize that our emotional baggage is frequently the root cause of our bodily and mental pain. When one isn't in tune with their emotional body, they are more likely to respond emotionally to external events rather than spiritual truths. Spiritual practices or physical routines as a means of evading pain won't get to the bottom of things. Period. Confronting the emotional body head-on, especially its dysfunctions of fear, rage, and sadness, is essential for genuine spiritual development. These are the soul matters of feeling that require consideration. Anger is commonly associated with the mental body, while fear is associated with the physical body. One can regain emotional stability and serenity by working on these fundamental dysfunctions. Since the plot is around revenge, and mourning is the emotional dysfunction associated with the emotional body. When we come into this world as unconditional beings and then encounter anything conditional, it's certain to make us physically sick with emotions like dread, rage, and grief. The discomfort of these sentiments causes us to fight them, which in turn causes us to engage in controlling and sedative actions. Because no one has yet figured out how to treat this disorder, society permits these behaviors to persist. Even if society should be doing something about this, people are nonetheless allowed to act in this way. Tobacco use, for instance, can serve as a means of regulation. When one is helpless and doesn't know what to do, lighting up a cigarette gives them a sense of power and makes everything feel okay. Similarly, when faced with unpleasant feelings, some may turn to alcohol as a sedative. Of course, marijuana also has sedative and controlling effects. Those who partake in marijuana frequently give off an air of calm serenity. The fact that these people can become quite angry when they don't have marijuana shows that their behavior is a form of self-medication. We will do anything to keep from experiencing the truth of our emotions. In response to their experiences, some people may choose to follow a spiritual path, which entails taking on new characteristics and ways of living. The hope is that by doing so, people will discover who they really are. The problem with this method is that it ignores the fact that genuine human emotions like fear, rage, and grief are present. Feelings like this aren't necessarily negative, they're just energy that isn't moving, blocked energy. Heat is the result of resistance, which is created when energy flows in an undirected fashion. Depending on how it makes them feel, individuals associate this electrically unpleasant heat with dread, wrath, or grief. Feelings of physical dread, mental rage, and emotional grief are the three main categories into which this emotion falls. Actually, though, these are only energy that have been stopped, thereby shifting the balance of our. Many people spend their life trying to escape these feelings and find fulfillment in things outside of themselves. We base our quest of happiness on the premise that something must transpire in order for us to experience happy. One thinks they will be happy if some things happen while others don't. Unfortunately, nothing stays the same in this physical world, and no amount of trying will bring you happiness. Overall, we might aim to be satisfied, but it is hard to find contentment, and satisfaction. The energy system within that stores these emotions, the inner self, is actually being shunned. When we try to escape our feelings, we tear the emotional body apart, which leads to inner turmoil. Consequently, people have a propensity to attribute positive or negative qualities to events, linking the former with God and the latter with Satan, thereby establishing a world divided and troubled. People often seek solace in spiritual practices in the belief that they might find a way to escape the emotional issues that they are avoiding internally. One must not run from their feelings if they want to return to a genuine condition. You can't find authenticity in a fake situation. Feeling the complete range of emotions, whether they be fear, rage, or grief, is the most genuine thing to do in any given situation. One enters authenticity by letting go and feeling these emotions. One can access their entire emotional range when they give oneself permission to feel fear. Reconnecting with the language of feelings, which may have been forgotten, is possible through experiencing these emotions." End quote. For many, the dread of being terrified is the driving force behind their avoidance of scary situations. They worry that something terrible will happen if they give in to the fear. But when they give in to the terror, they usually find that their fury is the real threat. Many people avoid acting on their anger because they think it would cause them harm, even though anger is associated with the mental plane. But when one lets themselves be consumed by rage, they come to terms with the fact that it is a symptom of grief, specifically grieving over past hurts like a shattered heart. In order to find release, one must first fall deeper into their rage. Only then will their sadness surface. Tears will flow as an outpouring of profound, unresolved emotion, rather than in response to any particular incident. In light of this, seek some protection from criticism, no matter how small it may be at the time, to abide by its promise. At last, the world will see its reality. Reliving painful experiences or looking for approval from other people are not healthy ways to grieve. The source is pure, unfiltered feeling, unencumbered by rational thought. It's all about disengaging from the preconceived notions that typically characterize the event. This is why it's a good sign when you cry, even though you don't understand why. It's crucial to let yourself cry without trying to understand or control them. When you cry for no apparent cause, it's an indication that your emotional body is releasing pent-up energy. The trick is to let the feelings pass through, rather than reacting with negative emotions like anger or fear. A return to one's genuine self is possible via the journey's emphasis on emotion. Feelings of dread, rage, and loss are not barriers to overcome, but rather portals to a more genuine and expressive identity. Dealing with sadness in that manner is also not going to work. Crying is draining, therefore it's better to confront sadness head-on rather than avoid it. The heart is like a child, therefore keep that in mind when dealing with a youngster who acts impulsively. It acts in a youngster's way. Coming to terms with your own fears won't help a fearful youngster when they enter a room. The same holds true for when a child comes into the room upset and your reaction is irritation. It won't help. This is also true of the heart. After putting in a lot of mental and emotional effort, many people still don't see results. The fact that they are still clinging to the abstract parts of their experiences is one reason they haven't delved deeply enough. They are also following their own heart, which is another explanation. They are just familiar with reacting, but there is a reaction anyway. Living in a time-based paradigm teaches us nothing but how to react, and humans are inherently reactive. You could put nearly every person on Earth on a desert island, with all their wants and needs met, aside from friends and family if you asked them what they wanted. They would probably sink into a profound melancholy. This is due to the fact that self-care becomes a mystery when we are not led. Someone advises us to brush our teeth when we come into this world. We eat because there will be repercussions if we skip meals. Others make all the decisions for us based on how we react. We put on an act to counteract the criticism we receive when our behavior is too impulsive. In the end, we get something out of this, where attention really belongs. All of us ride at our dreams, until we have freed the creative and more physical time to settle into them. This state of mind is limited. We will continue to be reactive unless we take action in response to our environment. This is why reaction, rather than response, drives many of our spiritual journeys. We keep asking why our efforts are yielding no tangible results. One must face their fears, anger, and grief head-on if they want to heal and go on. We overcome our dread of such emotions by doing this. Once we stop trying to escape the present, we can start to feel at home in our emotional bodies. When we get here, we build a deep vocabulary, a limitless, expansive one. Consider a bottle as an example of something really basic. It's merely a tangible item, yet there are numerous ways to explain it. There would be a wide range of opinions if you all wrote 20-page essays on the subject. The vast and complicated mental plane is this. The realm of emotions is equally vast, if not more so. If we can master the language of emotions and live from that place, there is no limit to what we can feel. What we call life is more of an emotional state than a rational idea or objective fact. It would be enough to live a simple life in a beach cottage if you were happy and healthy. It wouldn't matter if you were in a mansion with all your desires met. What matters is that you feel poorly. A sense of oneness with oneself is achieved when we cease avoiding our feelings and allow ourselves to fully experience them. When we stop trying to escape one bad experience by rushing into the next, that's when happiness sets in. To be joyful is to have a connection with our emotional selves, not just an emotion. It's about not trying to escape our feelings, but instead letting them flow through us. We feel joy when we accomplish this. For instance, when we're happy, we may perceive a feeling that we used to label sadness as just energy. Repressing or denying the emotion is not the point. We don't put on an act to sidestep it. Rather, we welcome it, saying to ourselves, "Let me be with this feeling today." When we give ourselves permission to feel whatever it is, we often come away from the day with a greater appreciation for it. The secret is to tune into how our thoughts, words, and deeds impact the world around us, by experiencing it fully and maintaining an open mind. We are starting to realize that this is the enlightenment we have been seeking. Even if a youngster rejects a parent's $500 gift because they have other desires, the parent will nonetheless provide for the child. But the kid has to let their parent take care of them. A parent will not shower their child with extra presents if they feel they are not appreciated. Intriguingly, the term appreciation can indicate two different things. Appreciation is a state of thankfulness, but the monetary worth of an item increases as it appreciates. If a youngster can multiply $500 into $2,500, their parents will be pleased to continue giving them more and more, since they will see their growth as a result of their appreciation. The same holds true for spiritual experiences. If God grants us one, and we turn our backs on it in search of something else, we have missed the mark. One way to develop is to simply sit in the life one has been given and be grateful for it. Not because one is better or worse, but because one is blessed. It's all about soaking up the incredible life we've been blessed with and living it to the fullest. Now that it's in my possession, I can simply enjoy it. Everything I know has been bestowed upon me, and as I am grateful, it grows even more. More is provided when the giver notices that I am making good use of what has been given to me. All of a sudden, the experience I'm in begins to grow in intensity and significance. This is the most profound spiritual experience I have ever had, and I know it. I refuse to approach the giver while still reacting if I choose to respond to them. I will not approach the giver while fleeing or entangled in a dispute. The giver has a vibratory nature, what I like to term spiritual, so I will approach them with gratitude and the words to express it. In contrast, the word vibrational adequately describes it. I need to build my emotional vocabulary if I ever want to approach the vibrating and encounter the provider. To understand the vibrations, this lexicon is necessary. No amount of prayer or meditation will help if I skip building that lexicon and jump straight to the vibrations. Without the giver's presence, I will not be able to hear it. This is due to the fact that the emotional body, namely sense perception, is the gateway into the vibration and the first point of contact with it. An emotion is God. Those devoid of emotional body awareness are the only ones who deny the existence of God or presence. An intimate, self-aware connection with the presence is possible after emotional body awareness has been created and experienced. The practice of asking other people to decipher one's presence is becoming obsolete. Anyone can feel it for themselves. When we feel something, our emotional body is where it all started. Here is where it all begins. The material universe as we know it now was born out of an idea that evolved from a person's subjective experience. A person's emotional response to the world and its things is the key to understanding and appreciating it all. But I will not comprehend this if I am unable to feel. Discord disappears when I calm my emotions, which include sadness, rage, and fear, and give myself permission to feel everything. There is complete stillness, and the internal conflict goes away. Nothing occurs in this quiet, and yet everything arises from this stillness. In that stillness, I can ask whatever it is I want to know or have any questions, and the answer will come to me emotionally as I follow the awareness pathway. Rather than existing only in one's head, it will take physical, emotional, and cognitive forms. A personal journey includes the emotional body. All other forms of authenticity lose their authenticity when we fail to be genuine with our own feelings. For now, we'll just have to pretend. It would be hasty to go in and correct things simply because we know the emotional body is the causal point of our experiences. It won't do to simply go in, fix the problem, and then go. I can't just get over my heartbreak and go on. My heart will always be my responsibility. On the inside, I still have a child's heart. The only way for me to enter heaven's kingdom is to return to my childhood innocence. My ability to achieve equilibrium depends on my ability to resolve this aspect of my experience. Consistency is one of the most crucial components of heart-centered work, as if you were a parent to a youngster. Compassion, reliability, always responding to it, not just reacting to it, and responsibility are crucial. I have to deal with this procedure on a daily basis. Since my experiences revolve around the heart, there is no escape from this. People can bring me stuff, massage me, or even speak for me, but no one can understand how I feel. That's why it's impossible to delegate responsibility for one's emotions. We would respond to outside forces rather than examine and change our own behavior if the environment assumed control of our feelings. Feelings of emotional responsibility can't be imposed from without, regardless of external circumstances. Someone else will step in and assume control if we shirk our responsibilities. Since dealing with the heart requires constancy, accountability, and compassion, we go on this journey to teach ourselves to think responsibly. It paves the way for us to start accomplishing little, regular tasks every day. Nobody has ever shown us the ropes. When we can't figure out how to pay attention to ourselves, we resort to external drama as a means of attracting the attention of others. If I go to the hospital today, maybe people will come see me, bring me fruit and flowers, and give me someone to talk to if I'm feeling lonely. Since nobody has shown us how to provide ourselves attention, we resort to making a mess of our life in order to attract attention. Emotional maturity is something we learn from within. Interactions with our own hearts are the means by which we develop emotionally. Action, appreciation, delight, kindness, fearfulness, love, joy, excitement. My soul is like a child. It's both the child and the creator in my heart. Its ability to generate new experiences is identical to that of its maker because it was formed in his likeness. No adult characters are mentioned in religious literature regarding the afterlife. Neither God nor the Creator is credited with the creation of adults. All they ever bring up are kids, whether they're living or dead, rebellious, or just acting, disinterested in the interests of others. That immature side of me is in charge. Even if an adult can make things, it is a child who really produces. Something can be created from nothing by a youngster. If I have the belief that love is ultimately about being left behind, then every time I desire love, I will bring about an experience of love, followed by abandonment, since that is how my inner child understands love. Exactly the reverse, because when Western society tells us to lean into the past, there is internal despair and belief in nothing but the future. Because no one else will rescue me from this mess, I will have to instill new habits in my child and lead by example if I ever want to turn things around. I am not expected to live up to this standard by the world. Thus, it cannot be expected of me. The approach helps us transition from reactive to responsive behavior and takes about 10 weeks to complete. This method not only lets us begin by establishing the causal point of our experience, but it also provides us with the experiential proof that this is, in fact, the causal point. We can learn that external changes are a reflection of inside changes. By taking advantage of this opportunity, this is the intended outcome of the procedure. If you are courageous enough to join us tomorrow, we will embark on this process together. We shall examine its structure and the various parts that make it up. People often dismiss the process because they are familiar with the techniques involved, such as breathing exercises or affirmations, meditations, breath-holding practices, affirmations. Take a tarot card reading as an example. When the reader displays the cards, we might be able to identify them. Hold on a second. I've seen those cards before. You're a fake. However, the reading isn't about the cards themselves. It's about the connection between them. Understanding their processes is all about deciphering the interplay between components and the underlying purpose. Tomorrow, we can examine it and conduct some internal work independently. There won't be any fuss. Crying in front of others is not necessary. I don't mind if you do that at home. You will experience a range of emotions during the day, but we won't require anyone to embody them. We can address any issues that have arisen in the past week or so tomorrow. We will address things during the day since you are aware of what they are. We'll walk you through it, show you what it's like, and go into more detail for people who have done it before. We will examine it thoroughly for anybody who are thinking about it. The ultimate aim is not healing. The point of being well is to get back to having fun, so we do that by playing. The maker's role is that of a maker, not a healer. Finished products do not require any editing. We don't stay in healing. Rather, it is a process of transition. We become better so we can make art and play again. After Sunday's little play, you should have a solid grasp of the material and be ready to decide for yourself if this is something you're interested in pursuing further. When it comes to our emotions, no one can help us in the end. When we dive headfirst into this task, we tackle it independently. By the time the weekend is over, someone will usually ask, "Can we form a group to do this?" However, the point of the process is to help you work with the group that God has put you in, the real group. Your group consists of the person behind the counter, your coworker, and any members of your family who are absolutely mind-blowing. That's the real deal, my friend. We are crossing the line into insincerity if we organize a special group to carry out a special task. Because the blessings are in the here and now, we want to remain in the present moment. That's the spot where the sadness, rage, and terror are exquisitely mirrored. With that in hand, we will figure out how to proceed. We have a lot of ground to cover today. Release any grip you may have on anything. Take what you can get and run with it. You are already experiencing an experience. There's no need to try to have another one. Lots of questions will be asked today. If the solution isn't there, don't try to answer them. The fact that we are primarily concerned with finding solutions rather than the underlying issues is a major issue at the moment. For instance, would you merely gaze at my lips if I were to inquire as to the time? Here, please, show us. When I pose a question, a spark ignites. That is the strength of the inquiry. It shifts momentum. The energy will be moved by the questions we go through today. I don't mind if you don't have the answer. We shall receive the replies. When we look within, we can always find the answers we need. At any particular time, the answers to the questions we've been asked are included in our life experiences. Please don't be concerned if you are unable to answer the questions posed today. As we go through life today, the solutions will become clear. Honestly, today's activities are really insignificant. You might have noticed that yesterday we were completely idle. We have no real plans for today. Our focus and purpose will be the tools we use throughout the day. With our help, you will embark on an adventure. The total of our focus and purpose at any particular instant becomes our experience. A person's emotional body uses intention as a tool, while the mental body uses attention. Our attention is constantly directed by our desire, since it is the causal center of our experience. Experiences in life take place wherever our focus is. The quality of an experience at any particular time is defined by the goal behind it. To find the variance, divide the attention by the intention. All day, every day, we use these two tools. We rely on them to break out of our time-based worldview and return to being fully present in the here and now. This entails the practice of integrative change as an art form. When we integrate, we achieve greatness and completeness. Plus, we are holiness personified when we are fully ourselves. Integration is the process of returning to wholeness. Acquiring it is a part of it. If you didn't understand the story of Fluffy, you wouldn't have found it funny. You found an opportunity and burst out laughing the second you understood it. Other openings will occur during the day as well. The mind is constantly striving to change the way things opened in the hopes that they will open again. You understand what I mean when I say beautiful twice. Ignore the introduction. What are the words? That's an opening, but then my mind asks, what are the words like that? The words are irrelevant. What occurs in the beginning is the main focus. The structure simply doesn't prevent progress, as long as the brain is aware. Straight lines require hard work. Straight tunnels aren't easy. During the beginning, integration is happening. Integration has nothing to do with making repairs. We are not here to resolve any issues. We are here to help you refocus on the one aspect of yourself that is always full and whole. Our purpose here is not to gain knowledge. We are here to reminisce and reintegrate. It is not our purpose to bring about global justice. Punishment does not imply retaliation. The pursuit of justice requires us to set aside our preconceived notions about what is happening, regardless of how. In order to perceive things for what they really are, we need to be able to detach ourselves from our past and our narratives. Yeah, that's fair. Justice is served. Recovery is also not the focus here. What has popped up in front of us is too big for us to hide. When you're sober, you have to learn to live in silent despair. Substance abuse, self-retreat, and group addiction are all ways that people in recovery try to numb their pain. Eliminating a person's support system will cause them to revert to their previous behavior, even if they are currently living in recovery. Consider this. For many people to live in recovery, it makes their world so impossible to interact with that they cannot live without it. Recovery is not the focus here. Find out more about it here. We want to go headfirst into an opening whenever one appears, such as a wound. We would like not to conceal it once more. Everything changes as we become conscious of it. We possess the ability to bring about transformation. Being mindful changes a wound by bringing our attention to its very center. This has nothing to do with being mindful of where you're going. We are not aiming for any certain outcome. We're not in a rush to finish this. Time is not something we are interested in limiting. In other words, we're adopting a journey awareness, which is an ongoing way of being in the world. Destination consciousness is a delight for the mind. Having a beginning and an end is what it prefers. This is how the mind works. By asking, when is this going to end? Please tell me when and where it is so that I can plan accordingly. Nobody can plan for their hearts. If we want our hearts to last, we need a longer-term strategy. A journey of perception is also integral to change. From erroneous to accurate perception we can go. Our perspective can shift from that of physical, mental, and emotional beings seeking a spiritual experience to that of a vibrational essence experiencing a fleeting experience of these aspects of ourselves. Chapter 9. Kingdoms. The next step is to go from being reactive to being responsive. It is possible to shift our focus from separateness to unity. Being fully present in the here and now is possible, rather than fixated on the past or the future. The way we hear and see the world around us can change, and we can also change the way we look at it. From scarcity to plenty, from struggle to ease. We can do it. Each of these transformations takes place on the inside of us. And the most remarkable thing about them is that a single shift can bring about all of them. Moving away from shortage is an inevitable consequence of shifting our consciousness from separation to oneness. We will naturally transition from victim and victor consciousness to vehicle consciousness if we start paying attention to our dreams instead of just daydreaming about them. which is something only asleep people do. Moving from a state of fear to love causes us to stop reacting and start responding. A single change can have a domino effect. The change that all of these accounts are describing is an internal one, impossible to see until it's accomplished. Working with the day's intention will be our primary emphasis for the time being. To begin, let's focus on one area of our lives that we would like to change. Feel free to select it. Find the problem that needs fixing. You should not give it too much thought. If this matter didn't evoke an emotional response, you wouldn't be paying attention to it. To successfully traverse this issue's metamorphosis, think about the emotion you would rather have than the one you are experiencing right now. See, many of us, particularly those who have shown up to this class, may have recently gone through some kind of emotional distress. Right in front of your eyes, you would have experienced a major emotional setback in your life. Its placement is intentional. It gives you a starting point. Pay close attention to that and accept it. There it is. That's my stuff for the day. Then think about 3 things you hated and 3 things you loved about your parents. Say your call. Now, if anyone has questions, please simply think about them privately. 10. Integrative change has a solid groundwork that can smooth our way through it. Our inability to alter our own nature is the first. For the wrong reasons, many of us have spent a lot of time and energy trying to improve ourselves, but to no avail. Our identities are immutable. Everything about us is flawless from the moment of our creation. But maybe we're a little off base with our experience. Since we can spend all of eternity attempting to alter who we are, the point is that perfection can only ever exist. Because something that is perfect cannot be made flawed, that is why it is called perfect. Experiencing perfection is like absorbing the sun's light. It is possible for our experiences to become imbalanced. The trouble with life's experiences is that they are all subject to change. Knowledge is dynamic and ever-evolving. So, rather than attempting to alter ourselves, we may simply alter our experiences if we can detach from them and learn from them. Every encounter brings about some kind of change. No amount of pandering or compromising will result in genuine and long-term transformation. We shall revert to our original condition once the individual for whom we are implementing the alterations no longer exists. As an example, we can't let the fact that our significant other dislikes the aroma of cigarettes make us quit. If we do, we'll start smoking again as soon as our significant other leaves the picture. When we implement an integrative change, we must do it solely with ourselves. It needs to walk its own path. How many of us think we have the power to shape the world around us? Please raise your hands if you agree. I am a part of your reality then, isn't that right? May I inquire as to the contents of my bag, if you please? Everything in particular? Therefore, if we wish to bring about genuine change in our lives, we must first be honest with ourselves. To eliminate the source of sadness, mental absences, reality. If a drama has roughed you of sleep in the past, we must first be honest with ourselves. As we make our way through the airport, we don't stop to smell the flowers or notice the person's perfume. If we could build our own world from the ground up, we'd know all the ins and outs before we ever stepped foot in there. Thus, let's be as forthright as possible regarding our current situation. We risk becoming trapped if we do not. We may be co-creators of this reality, but either way, we're here, experiencing what it's like to be human. Claiming to shape our own world is dishonest. Together, we create it. We have the power to shape our perception of events as they happen. This is the reality we can face head-on and act on with integrity. Therefore, let us zero in on that. Let us master it by utilizing our experience of the reality that is taking place around us. One other thing. When you first start implementing integrative change, It will be uncomfortable. Those who aren't prepared for the challenge will be thrown out at that point. This is not the job for you if you are seeking a simple and quick fix. At the outset, it is not concerned with easy and good. When you get headfirst into this work, you'll forget about wanting things to be easy and good, but rather ask yourself whether these are easy things to work, and if so, whether working on them is the right result. You will come to see that whenever you have pursued what is easy and good, you have neglected what would propel your personal growth. The mind is dependent on familiarity, so this practice seems awkward at first. Its attachment style is that of a tool. It finds security in clinging to and being entangled with something. Then, when we express a desire to alter our behavior, our minds automatically label any changes as unfamiliar, wrong, or evil, due to the lack of familiarity. It seems like something is wrong. If we give in to our thoughts, we'll find ourselves regressing to our old habits and the things that make us feel safe. When we feel ready to rise, we have the ability to accomplish great things. Because discomfort is a sign that we are making progress toward our goals, we must be willing to welcome it if we truly desire to change. Another quality necessary for change is surrender, or being receptive to the result without preconceived notions. We need to let go and be receptive to whatever happens. Another lovely word is surrender. Like biological transformation, integrative change happens instantly. It's immediate because we might grasp some concepts immediately. However, our understanding will naturally develop as we go through life. For instance, making the change takes no time at all. The transformation itself doesn't take long to accomplish. But the mental, emotional, and physical density of the bodies we're dealing with make it a slow process to manifest in our experience. So we are granted time. There is an abundance of time to make a difference. We began yesterday by exploring the origins of consciousness and the ways in which we enter the world, beginning with the vibratory state in the womb and continuing through the emotional and mental stages of childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. By utilizing the techniques of the presence process, we will progressively go from a state of physical presence to one of mental clarity and emotional balance today. Furthermore, we will take no action. The focus of the presence process tools is on undoing, not doing. Instead of doing anything, we would rather undo everything. Although I am speaking, I am not a rapper, but rather an unripper. The presence process will make use of three primary instruments. Breathing is the initial instrument. Could you tell me how to make the room cooler? The weather is turning hot. Maybe we're supposed to make a meal today. Therefore, breathing will be the initial tool we examine. Breathing is a tool for releasing ourselves from a time-based state of consciousness. A lot of people like me like to kill time. For instance, we may be driving along when our minds wander to thoughts about the day ahead, current events at work, or even the person we just spoke with. Despite their departure, we persist in attempting to convey our argument. Listen, I'll explain it to you that way. I must admit, I am correct about this. There must be a God, since this proves it. Given the current state of the roads, it is safe to say that God is sick of being our driver and would want to do something else. Thus, it is an addiction to one's thoughts. For the most part, we don't leave that mental area. Just look at my hand if you're interested in having this experience. No matter what, don't take your gaze off my hand. Consider the restaurant you ate lunch at yesterday. If you concentrate on my hand and imagine it for a long enough time, you might be able to sense the aroma of the food, the flavor of the meal, the sound of the conversation, and the texture of the silverware. Even though it's not real, you can experience it to the fullest as if it were. The fact that we can actually make judgments while physically present there is even more bizarre. When that happens, things start to get strange. Time travel into the future is also within our reach. You can sense the sheets, the room's warmth, and the ambient noises if you return your attention to my hand and imagine falling asleep this evening. Except it's when we're at that position that we make decisions. The problem is when we're at that position that we make decisions. The physical world is becoming too loud and the screams are too high. Still, it's when we're at that position that we make decisions. How would those choices benefit us now? It is not the time of day that matters to us. It has nothing to do with keeping one's eyes on a timepiece. There is no problem with the time. Everybody needs a clock. Emotional time, or where our focus is the time that matters to us. Who or what is motivating me to focus on the past or the future? That is my goal. I formed the habit of going into that time-based experience at a young age. My sensations were so overwhelming that I couldn't process them all. As a result, I began making a location in the past and then made another location in the future to get around it. From there, I run my business. We wish to free ourselves from that conduct since, despite appearances, it is not a genuine experience. This very second is all that matters. Life happens at this very second. Only in this very instant may we encounter God as He really is. Sign, Samuel. Going back in time in this way is what we call living as the living dead. It's like resurrecting from the dead by freeing ourselves from this illusion of time. Breathing is a powerful skill that can help you achieve this. In this view, life is respiration. Anyone who has it won't be able to live without it. People can survive for a long time without food or water. Removing their breath, though, will hasten the process. Because breath is transient, we don't give it much thought. A person is a fascinating being. All the time we stop between breaths without even realizing it. It is simple to spy on someone while they are on the phone. Pleased to meet you. That individual is not present. Their departure has been notified. You are no longer needed to breathe after you depart. When there is a hazard, an important person is to be assessed. Breathing is merely utilized for the purpose of fundamental physical maintenance. Some creatures, such as dolphins and hippos, deliberately hold their breath for a moment. Pranayama is a form of yoga. Instead of trying to regulate our breathing, we should focus on letting go of control. Learning to breathe automatically is the goal of pranayama yoga, which focuses on controlling the breath. As some risk-his say, pranayama is a fantastic practice to noticeably move the body and gain a certain level of calm. We like to breathe naturally, without effort, rather than trying to regulate our breathing. A cat or dog can be observed. However, to avoid making others anxious, try not to breathe like a dog. Like a cat, a dog's breathing is crucial. Since it's interconnected, a tiny part of our awareness has to stay here and now when we intentionally tune into our breathing. I need to stay put right now if I want to get in touch with my breathing. It helps me ground myself in the here and now. Whenever I do this, the locations where I've developed an addiction to running into them will immediately pop into my head. As soon as I stop paying attention to these areas, they will begin to rattle. I need to just go there, feel the fear, exert control, worry, and then make a decision. These ideas will arise when I keep my focus on the here and now. At first, they will manifest as bodily sensations, as that is where my consciousness is located. After that, I'll have these epiphanies that clarify my misunderstandings and contradict my beliefs. Emotional energy that manifests as terror, wrath, or loss will surface as energetic experiences at some point. And after that, I can handle their processing. Only 15 minutes of daily practice is required when we intentionally incorporate breathing into this process. To start the procedure, That is all that is needed. Just by bringing our awareness to the here and now, even for a brief period of time, we can bring about profound and long-lasting transformation in our lives. An essential skill is breathing. An additional intriguing aspect of breathing is that our utilization of lung capacity and oxygen intake are both limited to approximately 13%. That is why oxygen cans are sold in stores. Does the idea of purchasing oxygen in the form of a tablet sound familiar to you? However, human oxygen consumption is only around 13%. We are also informed that we are only cognizant of using 13% of our brain. Everything else occurs subconsciously. According to scientists, only approximately 13% of our DNA is actually used for anything. The remaining portion is referred to as junk DNA. It's quite challenging to wake up one day and decide, that's it, I'm turning over a new leaf. I'm now going to use 26% of my DNA today. It's also quite impossible to wake up one day and decide, I'm tired of being so stupid. From now onwards, I'm going to use 25% more of my brain capacity. Similarly, it's very unlikely that someone would wake up and declare, I'm tired of being such an unconscious person. I'm going to be 32% more conscious today. Perhaps this is what we call conscious attention. What we can do, though, is get up and make a conscious effort to breathe more deeply today. By gradually increasing the amount of air we exhale, we can eventually make this a habit. As an example, we can increase our lung capacity and oxygenation levels by breathing deeply for 15 minutes twice a day. Some strange things might start happening as we do this. As we gain insight into previously incomprehensible concepts, we begin to feel a little more intelligent. Things like colors, textures, and sound clarity could all see some changes. As if something deep within is being stimulated, we might even have flashes of insight. True, oxygen is a powerful instrument. Oxygen is one of space's mysteries. Bringing our attention back to the here and now through mindful breathing can aid in this entire process. Our perceptual tools work in tandem with our respiratory mechanisms. I paused to tally up all the perceptual tools I had picked up before I departed South Africa. Over 50 perceptual tools were found, and I'm sure there are more. A perceptual aid modifies how we see things. For instance, when we breathe consciously, we're not actually doing anything different. Rather, we're just bringing our attention to an action that we already perform. Breathing. One method in which perceptual tools help us perceive things differently is by encouraging us to shift our perspective. Nothing new is required of us. All we are asked to do is change our perspective. The 7-year cycle and the pathway of consciousness are two examples of perceptual tools. Our lives are forever changed once we understand the mechanism of the awareness route. Without taking any action, we have a heightened awareness of things that were previously unseen. On a daily basis, we start to become aware of how we utilize this pathway of awareness. Think about the time we wish to go dress shopping. The drive to buy it stems from a desire to experience pleasure. After that, we assess our current financial status and begin to plan how to finance it. Despite our initial reservations, we decide to go ahead and purchase it. The road of consciousness takes one through these stages, beginning with the emotional and ending with the physical. There's no more work required for this perceptual tool. Throughout, we make use of perceptual methods and something we term presence activation claims. Our goal is to minimize any potential confusion with positive thinking, so we will avoid using the phrase affirmations when referring to these. The development of an optimistic outlook is frequently a response to adversity. We turn to it when we're feeling down about something. However, positive thinking is often ineffectual because nobody uses it when they are at peace. Affirmations aren't used by us to change the world around us. If you're staring at an empty wallet and trying to chant, "I am abundant, I am abundant," you're missing the point. Without dealing with the root cause, it is futile to try to alter an effect, such as a shortage of funds. We have an alternative method for activating presence assertions. They point us in the direction of our weaknesses, even when they appear counterintuitive. One such remark could be, "I choose to experience this moment." By telling ourselves this over and over, we might be surprised by the results. Chaos may be the first thing we have to overcome if we truly desire serenity. That's because the already present calm is being obscured by the disorder. If we want to live in harmony, we have to clean up our own personal disorder. Addressing the obstacles that prevent us from fully engaging with the here and now is the invitation provided by presence activation statements. These claims may force us to face disorder, but that is precisely the environment in which we must operate. Furthermore, we delve into the idea of not doing. If we picture ourselves as water and our mental, emotional, and bodily sensations as oil, then every action we take to alleviate the pain is equivalent to stirring a container of oil and water. Just as shaking the jar makes the oil and water indistinguishable, trying to mend things by reacting just makes things more confusing. We choose to release control and wait for things to calm down. The oil will naturally come to the surface, which we can then process. If we do this, the act of not doing is setting the jar down and letting things rise to the surface unimpeded. Like pouring oil from a jar, this method helps us calm down and focus on what's really important, so that we can take care of what needs addressing. Our inner presence is the primary emphasis of the first session. When we are fully present in ourselves, unaffected by the events around us, we are experiencing inner presence. A ray of sunshine is one way to describe it. The source is symbolized by the sun, and our inner presence is represented by the ray. This inside presence possesses specific characteristics. Inner presence consists of 5 insect legs. To begin with, it has no concept of relative difficulty. Everywhere we go, people treat us differently depending on whether we're sick with cancer or just have a cough. An order of difficulty is used by the doctor when working. But inner presence is not a problem-solving hierarchy. There is nothing that it cannot accomplish, because it is a beam of the energy that made everything. Additionally, our well-being is the primary concern of inner presence. Quote, "It isn't self-centered in its operation. It doesn't tell us, 'I've been trying to talk to you for a long time, but you haven't paid attention, so I'm finished.' Rather, it lets us develop and heal through its messages. A friend who sees through our front and isn't like that is great to have, but it's great to have friends like that overall. There would be no way for you to pick yours if I had to take them from you and me and then move them around behind my back. There would still be just one presence in my palm, because the presence within each of us is so identical that they are indistinguishable from one another. The presence within each of us is so identical because we are already from one another. When dealing with causative points, things we can't remember, this quality is vital. For instance, when I ask presence to help me and guide me back into the now and now, it draws my attention to memories that haven't fully integrated that I'm not even aware of. All because the presence inside me is identical to the presence within you. When it's active around me, it can set up emotional resonances, making you say something carelessly that brings back a painful memory from my past. Constantly, the same distractions which prey upon your attention. You get focused to the point where clarity is essential and not just a foreign concept, and might get angry because I'll blame you even though you're completely uninformed. The sound of a car, the radio, or anything else in the real world can be used by presence to bring up memories. Please keep in mind that what matters most when retrieving a memory is not the actual occurrence or the details of the narrative, but rather the emotional impact and the level of energy we experience in response to it. A state of unity consciousness can be achieved by bringing oneself into harmony with the presence that permeates all things. Unquote. When we come into harmony with the oneness of our presence, it transforms how we experience the world. The feeling of oneness becomes unique. A person's mere presence has no impact. The act of offering advice without being asked for is known as interference, and it occurs when one feels uneasy about how the behaviors of others will impact their own experience. The failure to accept complete ownership of one's own experience is the root cause of interference. Exercise. If a person doesn't think they're accountable for their own life, they'll also probably not think other people are accountable for theirs, and they'll keep meddling in their affairs. In spite of its seeming simplicity, breathing may be a real challenge. A lot of times, resistance will pop up while you're practicing breathing. For instance, no matter how much time one sets aside to focus on breathing, something else always appears to demand their attention first. Similar to the resistance movement during war, the emergence of resistance is a crucial sign that advancements are being accomplished. The resistance may look like enemies at first glance, but they actually have the information and supplies needed to get back to safety. When dealing with sensitive or processing-based issues, resistance is common. To be on the correct road is to see this. Breathing twice a day might be the most self-indulgent act a human has ever done. Exercising, for instance, is often done in reaction to societal expectations for physical appearance or acceptability, even while the individual believes they are acting in their own self-interest. It becomes apparent that the internal will was never fully developed when external support is gone. When you don't see any evidence of success from outside sources, it might be hard to stick to a personal practice like breathing. Keeping going becomes more of a challenge when there is no one to complement your efforts. Contrary to popular belief, the universe does not endorse this work, and may even ridicule those who try to find approval. To develop emotionally, one must learn to offer to themselves what they have so desperately wanted from other people. No one can avoid this process as long as they are present, and the foolishness of seeking acceptance from other people is brought to light every time one does so. True emotional growth requires overcoming obstacles, which include resistance and a lack of support. Our inward labor is this: observing a public meditator who appears at one with the cosmos is the most beautiful thing. Just what is that individual actually up to? As a group, they are engaging in inward process. There is nothing complicated about the breathing method. Being so accustomed to breathing mechanically makes it difficult for us to understand, despite its seeming simplicity. Since this is all new to most of us, what we actually desire is to breathe normally. It's all about that seamless transition from inhalation to exhalation. Because the amount of oxygen that enters through the nose is different from the amount that enters through the mouth, it is advisable that we only breathe in and out through the nose. If you breathe in through your mouth and out through your nose, or if you do the opposite, it will throw off your breathing pattern. As our muscles relax, the body relaxes too and starts breathing normally. Maintaining a steady equilibrium is the objective. Breathing becomes effortless. Give it a try for 15 minutes and observe the results. At first, you could feel a bit lightheaded since your body is taking in extra oxygen. After trying it a few times, you won't feel dizzy anymore. You won't feel faint at all after a while. Breathe normally if at all possible. Members of an orchestra are not attempting to compose music. Rather, they are merely performing their instruments. In the same vein, when you breathe, don't force it. You need to breathe loudly enough to hear your own breathing. We search for experiences all the time, and that's why we have trouble breathing. If we tell ourselves things like, "I've been breathing, but I don't feel anything," we're missing the point. Every moment is a new adventure. The act of breathing is merely a means by which we might enrich our lives. When we anticipate a sensory experience only by inhaling, it's usually because we're unhappy with where we are in life and want to escape. Grounding oneself in the presence of our inner being occurs each time one connects with their breath. Our emotional body is immediately adjusted by this practice. Even if we don't fully grasp these changes at first, we'll certainly notice how they impact our daily lives. It is suggested to sit quietly for a few moments after the 15 minutes of breathing exercises. This aspect of the practice is crucial. Movement, sound, and shape comprise the trinity that constitutes our perception of the physical universe. All day long, our focus is on these three things: motion, sound, and shape. As part of our spiritual practice, we occasionally deny their reality. But the reality of this world will sink in like a rock when you take a club to the skull. While this universe does exist, it will eventually pass. To state that this planet is not eternal would be more correct. The origin and ultimate destination of all things with motion, sound, and shape are emptiness, stillness, and invisibleness. Behold, the everlasting components. What happens to our consciousness when we exit this world if we fixate on motion, sound, and shape all the time? The reason we let go of it is because we linked it to something transient. We might not remember our previous life because we became too attached to transient things. Therefore, we must begin to associate our consciousness with emptiness, quiet, and transparency. First, we need to sit quietly in a place where no one else is around while we do this. The secrecy aspect of the inner labor is this. When we share what we've been working on internally with other people, it enters the world, and the world is fleeting. Developing a connection with the everlasting and the actual begins with sitting quietly and stilly after breathing. This connection might not seem significant at first, as the world doesn't seem to be on board with it. The world facilitates connections with transient things, but a connection to the eternal must originate within. This is the real reason people meditate. The biblical command to lay foundations on rock rather than sand is central to Christian doctrines. Things that are fleeting and subject to the passage of time are like sand. They will be swept away in due course. What is permanent is symbolized by the rock. To reach the rock, one must be silent, calm, and invisible. Remember to keep your inner work private as you engage in this activity. Only you and your Creator should know about it. The time and energy you put into that bond will last a lifetime. Our intentions are magnified when we breathe. The purpose behind one's breathing dictates how one uses it. Breathing rapidly is one technique for processing unconsciousness, while lengthy deep breaths are more commonly used in meditation. Feelings of fatigue, brought on by previously unconscious material, can lead us to unconsciously fall into a sleep state. One possible outcome of breathing deeply is the development of a train of thought. Leaving the physical body and entering the mental plane is possible. This transition could feel like dozing off while you breathe. Suddenly, you might realize that you were actually dozing off. If you are awake, then you have departed from this physical form. Faster breathing helps us when we have bouts of unconsciousness. Actually, you'll feel like you're slipping out of your body when you exhale, when that state of unconsciousness hits. So, when the exhalation is complete, you will just vanish. If your focusing at that point is on relaxing, set aside any last-minute stresses, relinquish distractions, and return to a sensory-friendly state. Increasing the rate of breathing slightly helps with this, and decreases lingering, which is something we all do to a certain degree between breaths. As soon as we settle into the breathing and release any tension, the rest will follow naturally. We have to put some effort into it at first, but after a while it will start breathing on its own. We work with low-frequency energy, which include emotions like fear, rage, and grief. We can raise our overall frequency by breathing more rapidly. From the emotional body, this is represented mentally. What we really need to keep in mind on a regular basis is our frequency. There is a common misunderstanding about memory as it pertains to processing emotions. We conceptualize memories as mental images and ideas that pop into our heads because we live in a time-based paradigm. Things are different with the memories we're dealing with, though. We frequently find ourselves rehashing stories when we see therapists to talk about our formative years. Because they are interpretations, these stories are susceptible to misunderstandings. After a few years of this, we have to cope with the narrative we made up around the memory. Working with these memories isn't about retrieving facts or stories, but rather about recentering our emotional bodies through the awareness pathway. What we call core memories are really vivid, emotionally charged occurrences that occurred long before we could make sense of them. One cannot, for instance, have a happy childhood until they are an adult. If you hear someone say they had a happy upbringing, it's because they were able to filter out the bad memories and focus on the good ones. Children do not think about happiness. It is an adult concept. Some of our memories, the helpful ones, will surface as pictures or insights, but we do our job by being fully present in our hearts. These memories typically resurface when we experience negative emotions in response to other people's actions or external events. Anytime anything in our world makes us sad, it's because something is being remembered. Our fixation on the material world makes it difficult to recognize this. Yet our memories are not based on the actual event or the narrative we tell ourselves. What lies underlying it is an emotional signature. Intentionally triggering the memories we need to work with, which often manifest as our distress over external events, is what happens when we request to be guided by inner presence. When we're angry, our natural tendency is to act out and show our feelings to the world. We enhance our experience with additional drama. For example, we might act as though someone is a significant other from our past if they begin acting in a way that reminds us of that person. As a result, we fail to perceive the actual human being before us and instead see a mirror image of ourselves. Reflection and projection are the norm for the majority of us. It's as if we're behind the wheel and constantly pondering why we keep slamming into things. To put a halt to this, we must begin to recognize the resurfacing memories in order to shift our response from reaction to action. The individual reminiscing is merely a conduit. They are unaware that they are conveying a message. We have asked to be guided, therefore presence works inside them to make this process easier. It is imperative that you refrain from shooting the messenger upon his appearance. It's the same as becoming angry at the mailman when he delivers a bill. Attempting to wipe a mirror after witnessing an unflattering reflection is a metaphor for this situation. Such conduct is fruitless. Knowing who sent the message is the first order of business. The ability to do so opens our eyes to the fact that our closest relationships reflect our emotions the most accurately. For example, whenever we experience distress, it is a reflection of our inner experiences. Nobody can provoke us if we don't already feel angry. Nobody can make us feel afraid or sad if we don't already have such emotions. It has nothing to do with external events if we are furious with another person. Rather, it stems from our own internal feelings of rage. What we can't perceive in ourselves is shown to us by the reflection. To perceive the link between the vitality of our hearts and their reflection in the external environment, we need insight. Our physical proximity can either unite or divide us. Our minds allow us to agree or disagree. In terms of emotions, nevertheless, there is no distancing. In this world, there is no real distinction between people in terms of the emotional energy they possess. Emotions are essentially energy in action. We require insight to perceive the energy at work and comprehend how our emotions manifest these experiences externally. It is imperative that we look within. It seems like everything is occurring to someone else unless we have insight. Separating fact from fiction is our first order of business. The true reason we become angry is because someone is attempting to take advantage of us. Illusion indeed. In reality, the cosmos is attempting to highlight an emotional pathology inside us that we have been blind to. I don't know why this keeps happening to me, and similar thoughts frequently cross our minds, since memory is a pattern that repeats itself. For instance, we may start a new work, put in our utmost effort, yet the boss is continuously finding fault with us. Maybe we tell ourselves, "This always happens wherever I go." But in reality, our boss is only a reflection of a former conflict we had with our dad. Even now, I can't get over the fact that he picked on me when I was a kid. Until I find a way to stop it, it keeps playing. Memories tend to follow a pattern. Let us pause for a second to center ourselves through deep breathing, eye closure, and introspection. Focus on the current emotional distress that we talked about when we started this trip together. Let go of the outside world. Just pretend that whatever it was, a behavior, an occurrence, or a situation, was trying to tell you something. Take the messenger at his word. Wake up and get back to the here and now. It has nothing to do with exhaustion or effort. We're accustomed to exerting great effort in order to achieve our goals, but we've recently discovered that the opposite is true. The less effort we put into anything, the faster it works. Things that happened in the next second might have been the ones that came to you easily the first time around. If you realize that it's not important to cling to your sadness, you can learn to accept it as a sign that the event is changing for the better. We may go on to the next step, which is to react mindfully to every event. Now, the point is not to respond to the message, but to glean information from the interaction. To begin, you must ignore the messenger. We learn to control our reactions as our emotional resilience and self-awareness grow. Thank the offender, make note of the interaction, and then give yourself time to work through your feelings if someone bothers you. Accumulating consciousness in the here and now is essential to the process. It is a finite process. Our true objective is to make use of the data provided by the encounter. Although the distressing incident itself is a physical occurrence, we must traverse the awareness pathway to confront the emotional and psychological dimensions of the experience. Our own selves are frequently the source of our problems, and this gets us closer to identifying them. While this stage is underway, it is important to ask questions. Nevertheless, the focus should not be on finding the answers. Just by asking the questions, we can activate the energy within. If you need answers, they will come when you need them. The trick is to redirect the energy, to stop directing it outside, and start absorbing it within. By doing so, we are able to pinpoint where our reaction originated. When we're unhappy, it's important to check in with ourselves and ask, how am I feeling? How does this feeling originate emotionally? It could be a mixture of dread, wrath, or grief. On a deeper level, there is always something. Melancholy and rage are often linked to one another. Locating the most recent instance of this emotional response is the following stage. Think back on times when you experienced similar emotions. You may then see how your current experiences may be related to things that happened in the past. rather than being solely focused on the here and now. If you keep asking yourself when you last had this emotion, you can start to notice a pattern, that it keeps happening. When you get to this understanding, you become more cognizant of the circumstance and gain insight into the emotional dynamics involved. Subsequently, inquire, to whom does this conduct bring to mind? Someone from your present life, like a boyfriend or a co-worker, might come to mind. If you give it more time, though, you could find that the actions bring back memories of loved ones from your past, including your parents. If you want to know where the emotional energy came from, you need look at who acted this way in the past. For example, if you understand the first concept, it will be easier to see how some other possibilities pop up. What happened in the past is still with us. The emotional body is a common storage location for energy, and when we ask these questions, we are rerouting it to its source. Our brains stimulate these areas even when we're not consciously aware of it. Things may begin to shift within us, whether physically, emotionally, or mentally, as our awareness of our emotional body grows. Be careful not to fixate on these feelings, though. Let the energy do the work. All you have to do is ask the questions. Let us go back to the upset now. Consider how you felt after going through this. Was it wrath, grief, terror, or some mix of the three? If we delve into the root of the matter, we can discover that anger stems from fear and sadness from fear. The first thing to do is to figure out how you felt about the encounter. The next question is to inquire as to the last time you experienced such a strong emotional response. Anxiety. You may observe that this current disturbance is a continuation of a pattern in this way. You should next consider, who does this conduct remind me of? You can see that the source of your distress is a reflection of something from your past by asking yourself this question, which helps you make connections between the present and your history. When you grasp this, you may manipulate it to your advantage. At this stage, you move from reacting to responding intentionally by asking yourself, I respond consciously to all my experiences. This is the present activation phrase you should be using. You shouldn't be worried if you don't have the answers right away. Skip this question and go on to the next one. As we practice the current activation statement, I restore my inner balance with my compassionate attention. Remember the image of standing up straight, closing your eyes, and then falling forward in excruciating pain from an imbalance, and just sitting with the question at the causal point is our task. We become unbalanced when we lack emotion. Having a firm grasp on the meaning of compassion is the first step in addressing that imbalance through attentive compassion. Kindness is different from sympathy. It's not about extending a helpful hand out of concern or sympathy. Forecasts are what those are. Someone who is always trying to lend a hand is probably projecting their own feelings of powerlessness onto the world around them. Compassion is distinct from attempting to fix an emotional situation by cleaning the mirror. Instead, they focus on resolving the emotional issue within themselves. Realizing that one's own ideas, words, and actions are the sparks that ignite one's own unique experiences is a key component. No matter where we move, we will always be in the middle of the fallout from our choices. By realizing this, we also have the knowledge that there are others who can relate. We refrain from interfering with other people's lives when we understand that we are personally accountable for our words, actions, and ideas. We frequently offer unsolicited counsel, since interfering would mean wanting to control their actions so that we don't get affected. On the other hand, if we accept personal responsibility for our lives, we can also accept the responsibility of others for the things that happen to them. Likewise, we can sometimes choose to surrender control over those things. Since appearances alike, we can hardly wish for anything else. It is not the drama or emotions like anguish, rage, or loss that cause the most suffering in the world, as we come to realize. Ignoring the fact that every one of us is ultimately responsible for our life circumstances is the source of all genuine sorrow. Without that knowledge, we feel unable to make a difference. Having no obligations is a common misconception about what it means to be free, but in reality, the two concepts are synonymous. We gain freedom when we own up to our mistakes and accept responsibility for our life. Peace will never come from sitting around waiting for other people to change. There's a catch-22. So, being compassionate isn't something you do. The key is to take ownership of our experiences and know that everyone else is learning the hard way. We can show compassion when we recognize that other people's trials are opportunities for growth. Their amount of responsibility may be highlighted if their experience is very difficult. We are here to support them through this, but we won't offer counsel until specifically asked for. Feelings of pity, worry, dread, condemnation, assumption, or interpretation are common foundations for advice. Being present without meddling is what it means to be compassionate. We respect their path and their autonomy to discover the answers on their own. But we can't be present for other people unless we're present for ourselves. Many of us have learned to respond defensively whenever we feel pain or discomfort. When we feel discomfort, our natural inclination is to worry that something is amiss and seek relief. But physical pain, in particular, is our body's way of telling us to re-establish communication. It's a gentle nudge to get back in touch with our physical selves and appreciate the intricate web of life that we inhabit. The essence of life is what gives physical form its vitality. But, finally, genuine compassion requires us to take stock of our own mental, verbal, and behavioral actions, while simultaneously acknowledging that other people are also on their own paths. Being fully present without interfering, lending a helping hand when requested, and valuing the individual stories of others are all part of it. Holding space for others to learn and grow, just as we do for ourselves, is the essence of compassion, not fixing or dominating. The key to liberation is accepting total responsibility for our actions and outcomes. When we learn to see challenges and setbacks as chances for personal development, we re-establish a connection to our true selves and develop a heightened awareness of our vitality. If you want to continue on your journey of self-discovery, make sure to subscribe to this channel to assure living more in the present moment. Reply with the word "now" in the comments when this message made sense to you. And if you want to continue growing in the future, also consider giving this video a like or sharing it with someone who might benefit from a gentle reminder to slow down in life and be more awake.